Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. My guest today is someone who believes that healing looks a little bit different for everyone, and that sometimes creativity can open doors when words cannot. Ella Hilsenrath is a licensed and board-certified art therapist whose work is grounded in trauma-informed care through her work with Alair Community Farm in Wall, New Jersey, a place I love very much. Ella helps people navigate trauma, stress, and some of life's hardest challenges. Ella, I am so glad you are here. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. I want to start by talking about Alair Community Farm. As I mentioned, the place is very close to my heart. We've had one of the co-founders, Joanne Burney, on Big Little Stories to talk about that place and why it's so special. I have to ask you, the first time you went to the farm, what did you think?
Oh my gosh, I was just enamored. I think, the actual location itself is so beautiful, and something so special about the farm is all the animals are rescued,
Yeah.
and you really get a sense of that, of the healing of the environment.
Yeah, yeah, and I talk to this about people who have never been there, and when I'm encouraging them to go, literally when you step onto the farm, you feel that you're just in a very special place. There's something about the energy that's there, and as you said, the animals and the people that work there that just make it feel like it's you have no doubt that you're in a very special place. And I want to talk to you about some of the work that you're doing there. But first, I want to kind of set the table here. You are you talk about self-disclosing, and you talk about this with the
Mhm.
clients that you work with. So, can you talk to me about your experience with chronic depression and anxiety, and when you realized this was something that you were struggling with?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very, I think disclosure is so important, especially when we're really trying to change the narrative of mental health
Yeah.
and really trying to change the hierarchy that mental health can always have. Um, I started struggling when I was around 14, and I really vividly remember going up to my parents and literally saying, I feel so sad and I don't know what's happening. And I think that also was sort of the start of trying to find words for my experience and
Mm.
explain it when it was unexplainable. So around that same time, I started having these episodes where I was, trembling and having chest pain and um, going to the emergency room thinking like something medically really dangerous was happening. And it took an unusual amount of time for anyone to suggest, like, oh, could this be a panic attack?
Mm.
And, you know, around this time, because of certain life circumstances, I was also incredibly isolated.
Mm.
So I was going through this depression, these panic attacks, and almost worse than that was just this really heavy shame
Mm.
and in isolation, sort of the spiral of feeling like a broken person and like a burden to my family. And I heard what I think a lot of people struggling here, which is, what do you have to be depressed about?
Right.
Or have you tried not being that way? And it's it's very difficult for people to understand how much that experience lives in your body.
Well, and,
Um,
and you're even talking about some of the physical manifestations of it. It's not just, I feel sad. Okay, so be happier. You actually feel it in your body, right?
Absolutely. And, I remember the first time I met another person who, disclosed having panic attacks. And I like still feel the relief that I felt that
Mm.
this is something that other people feel too and is actually incredibly common. And that relief of just finding one other person
Yeah.
who mirrored that experience was really the beginning of my healing journey as well.
I'm just going to take a second to say that's one of the reasons why storytelling to me is so important, because it inspires, it educates, and it builds community, and it makes you feel like you are not alone. So sharing your story, I know is someone hopefully is listening to this and saying like, oh, it's not just me. Like, there is something there. So at what point then did you go to therapy?
Oh my goodness. So that's an excellent question because even though, I'm here, preaching about therapy, I think I really for years struggled with the stigma
Mm,
of getting help. Like it took me way too long because that shame was still so loud.
yeah.
And I still felt like I didn't have the answers that I felt like a talk therapist would want. And so it took, um, I went my whole teenage years, young adult, early 20s without seeing a therapist.
Mm.
And then finally did actually, once I started going to college, and I actually started making art about what I was going through and sort of started really looking at it and having it mirrored to me. And that's when I kind of was like, maybe it's not so scary to face it. Maybe this
So
is something yeah.
So were you intentionally making art about what you were going through, or were you, you know, enjoying the practice of being artistic, and then you realized that your art was kind of reflecting what was going on inside you?
Yeah, you're spot on. I was just kind of, I went to school for art and during my thesis year, just was making a lot of, this sounds weird, but really bizarre art and kind of like, um, at first I was like, why am I making this? Like, I don't know what's happening. And, um, it really did just come out.
Mm.
And I think even now looking back on like the early stuff I started making, I'm like, this makes so much sense.
So, but take me through that process. So you're creating art because you're enjoying the creation of the art. You realize that maybe this stuff is a little, to use your word, a little bizarre. How do you then do you then take this to a therapist and say, "Look at what I'm making, help me"? Like how does one go from that to the other?
Sure. It can definitely depend. I am biased,
Oh,
obviously,
sure,
but that's
sure.
why I think, in art therapy, a lot of the time that is what you're doing. You're sort of just offering the space for creation, and a lot of the time, what needs to come out does come out. And the therapist is there to kind of talk or not talk
Mm,
about what is happening, but most importantly, it's like a mutual witnessing. So, I, my first, my therapist was a talk therapist, um, which was still very helpful to me. Um, and I think for me, the art was more like my own signal of
mm,
like, I'm ready.
yeah, yeah. And so explain the difference for, and I know you and I have had this conversation, but for people who may not know, explain the difference between talk therapy and art therapy.
Oh, of course. So when we think of traditional talk therapy, even CBT, DBT, things like that, those are what we call like top-down therapies. So you're really working on your thought process and your thought patterns and um, trying to kind of alter them to be more less maladaptive. Um, and that can be really helpful, verbally processing. However, types of therapies like art therapy, like Animal assisted therapy, EMDR, things like that are bottom up approaches. And those really start by honoring the felt sense first.
Hmm.
So it focuses sort of on the part of your brain that has your survival response, your autonomic nervous system. So you're focusing on that felt sense and then paying attention to how you feel, validating it, and being compassionate towards it. And then sort of working on how can you feel safe enough to change things.
So I want to talk about the specific types of therapy that you are doing at the farm. But before we get to that, just go over that difference again between what is bottom up therapy. What does that mean?
Sure. So the reason it's called bottom up is it works on, the part of your brain that's located towards the base. So these are our memories, it's our autonomic nervous system. It's in a lot of ways really the feeling part of our
Mm.
brain. And so you are working on how are things feeling in your body? Like you said, and like we were talking about with like the panic attacks, like how is that showing up? And like, why is my body feeling unsafe? And instead of kind of trying to just explain it and change it right away, you're paying attention to what's happening. And, instead of saying, what is wrong with you, you're saying, your behavior makes sense
Mm.
given, the way life is or what you've been through. So it's often a much gentler way of approaching therapy, especially for people who are survivors of trauma. Um, yeah.
I was just going to ask you, does that type of therapy work particularly well for certain people who may have experienced things over other things?
Oh, absolutely. It is, bottom up approaches are sort of the standard for trauma therapy because a lot of the time with trauma, you have the amygdala sort of setting off a fire alarm, and that is such a visceral physical
Yeah.
reaction
Yeah.
that you need to really look at and feel before trying to change.
This is fascinating. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the programs that are at the farm, the types of therapy that you're doing at the farm, because I think you have the ability to help a lot of people. So we'll take a quick break and we come back more Big Little Stories after this. So Ella, talk to me about the work that you're doing with Alair Community Farm. And there's something that it's new to the farm. It's called the Haven Program. What is that?
So the Haven program, it stands for Healing Through Animals, Visual Expression, and Nature. And it is really a therapeutic program for any individuals across the lifespan who, are struggling, whether it's trauma, whether it's just chronic stress, providing an outlet for that.
And there are several different modalities that are part of the Haven program. So, if it's all right with you, I kind of want to run through them so that people get a sense of what's being offered. And the first one is EMDR.
Yes. Yeah. So, sure. Um, EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And it is also a bottom up approach. It focuses on how certain memories make us feel in the present.
Mm.
So, instead of, just verbally processing what has happened to us, you're kind of reprocessing your experience and how it affects you now. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's IFS.
Yes. So IFS is internal family systems. Um, it's a really wonderful modality of therapy because you know, the goal of it is to be more compassionate towards ourselves. It's
Mm,
the idea that we have, our core self, and then we have these sub personalities. And it makes it a lot easier to be kind to ourselves when
yeah.
we're, thinking of like, there's a part of me that gets really mad versus like, I'm an angry person.
Sand tray therapy.
Sure. So Sandtray works actually great with both IFS and EMDR. It's basically using figures, and I have an impressive collection of figurines, and you're kind of creating worlds and creating stories within a sand tray. And it's sort of a representation of just our thoughts without needing to verbally name everything.
Um, and then there's the art therapy.
Yes. So, art therapy can look like so many different things from, just sensory based regulation to just providing, like I said, an outlet for our experiences, to self soothing, and again, focused on just not everything needs to be verbally
Mm.
processed. And it's a very gentle way of getting comfortable with disclosure and getting comfortable facing our experiences.
And then the last one is the animal assisted therapy, which I know the farm does so beautifully.
Absolutely. So, the animal assisted therapy that can be integrated in any of the things I said. We do, EMDR with the animals, IFS, and it can look like so many things from grooming, from playing games with the
Mm.
animals, to even just noticing and seeing what kind of comes up when we are in the presence of certain creatures.
Why is it easier for some people to do therapy that doesn't involve talking?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the reasons is sometimes we just don't have the words.
Yeah.
Just like, when I was 14 and was like, I don't know why I'm so sad.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't even know what is going on until we see it in our art or we
Yeah.
see it in an animal. Like we genuinely don't know. Another reason is I think, the shame,
Yeah.
um, the stigma, and you know unfortunately mental health does have a bit of a history of being punitive. And so a lot of people, even when they don't realize it, there is a very real fear in speaking about our experiences.
And I think also it's hard to sometimes look into someone's eyes, someone who maybe a stranger, and completely open up. And by
Absolutely.
with some of these modalities, you don't have to make eye contact to
Yeah,
which makes it easier to talk about to be in a more vulnerable state.
100%. Absolutely. Even having that, having like a third thing to focus on. So the art or an animal or, the sand tray, you're giving the person some grace and letting them know that even if they are not talking to you right now, they're not going to disappoint you.
Right.
They can exist any way they need to exist.
So we touched on this before, but who are good candidates for this type of work? Who should be reaching out to the farm to sign up for these programs?
Sure. Genuinely, I think everyone and anyone could benefit.
That's a true
Um,
therapist answer, Ella.
um, Absolutely. I would say it's a great option for people who haven't had much luck with talk therapy.
Yeah.
It's a great option for, kids or teens who maybe are a little resistant to therapy. But genuinely, I think it's a wonderful option for everyone.
You talked about the stigma. Do you think that we are getting better about that? Or do you think the stigma is still there and preventing people from getting help?
I think we've definitely come a long way. I think it's definitely better. But I think it is absolutely still there. Yeah.
Um, and do you think we will continue to get better? What do you think we need to do to become just mentally healthier or healthier with our mental health?
Sure. I think a really beautiful way for us to approach mental health is um, less like a broken thing that needs to be fixed.
Mm,
And there can be this pressure, when you go into treatment of any kind of, I need to hurry up and heal, I need to
yeah.
hurry up and be fixed. And I think moving forward, if we, someday can just honor that everyone's system is different and really, a conversation I have a lot with clients is like, what even really is normal?
Yeah.
And a
Is
lot
there
of the
such a thing?
time, yeah, right, we
Right.
come to the conclusion that like that's not really a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, if people want more information, they can check out the farm's website, right?
Yeah.
AlareCommunityFarm.org. And Ella, we end each one of these conversations with something we call three big little questions. We'll do them rapid
Awesome.
fire. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I love asking therapists this question. How do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
um That's a great question. I think definitely spending time with my pets, especially my dog Biggie. He's like my heart outside my
Aw,
body.
I love that. And what's your go-to karaoke song?
Wow, that's such a good question. Total eclipse of the heart.
You're the second person today that gave me that answer. That's so funny. I guess
It's because it's a great
it's
song.
a great song. It's a great song. And what's your favorite spot in New Jersey?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I'm gonna be cheesy and say Alaire Community Farm.
If you didn't say it, I was gonna like give you a little hint to make sure you say that. Ella, thank you so much for the work you're doing, for the way you're helping people, for the partnership that you've created now at the farm, and all of the wonderful people you're going to help at the farm. And thanks for taking the time for being here. I've loved this conversation. Hope to talk to you again very soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you. And that will do it for this week's Big Little Stories. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Big Little Story Show. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. I'll talk to you next time.